Okay, so today we're going to talk about the third pillar of healthy eating, which is simple in principle, basically eating whole foods. And we'll go over that some today. And we'll also revisit something that we visited earlier in the series, which is looking at our values and looking at how we spend our energy. And so energetically, that might include time, mental energy, money, and whether there are areas of self-care um, or different domains in our life where we might begin to want to make some changes so that we can better able, so that we can be better, so that we can more easily be able to facilitate changes in how we eat and our overall health. Okay, so to actually, I'm just going to let it switch to there. We don't need to go over what we're going to do today. We'll just do what we're going to do today. Every week, I have us look at mindful eating skills, and today we're going to broaden that to more healthy skills that are going to be important for facilitating mindful eating. So we know this list. And again, I would encourage you, if not now, then after this webinar, and if you're watching it on YouTube, you can just pause right now and assess what mindful eating skills have been helpful for you these past couple of weeks. And you might just for this session, just leave it at that. Just notice what's been helpful. Yeah. And then, of course, there are other mindful lifestyles behaviors to address, and we will be addressing more mind-body connection today. And we'll be getting down to some nitty-gritty in terms of mind-body connection, in terms of hunger and fullness, and taste satiety. And then, of course, we have behaviors that we would prefer to do less often. And when we look at those, we are compassionate with ourselves. And we look at how we can gently move forward so that we don't have to engage in these behaviors as often. So today, we're going to look at the third pillar of healthy eating. The first pillar was eating to reduce chronic inflammation. The second pillar was eating to manage blood sugar levels. And the third pillar is to eat whole foods. And of course, that whole foods, when we eat whole foods, it is going to help balance blood sugar, and it is going to reduce chronic inflammation. So a nice 2 sets of mantras for eating more whole foods come from Michael Pollan, and for many years, well, he's a journalist and he advocating eating whole foods in a sensible way. And so Michael Pollan says, don't eat anything your great grandma wouldn't recognize as food. And then his short mantra for another short mantra for food is to eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So that's where we're going today. Okay. in eating whole foods, right? Fruits, vegetables, potatoes, beans, whole grain rice. In eating whole foods, we avoid processed sugar, processed flour, sodium. So, sodium is added to a lot of processed foods to mask the flavor of chemicals. So, for those of us who eat a lot of processed foods, we're going to get a lot of sodium. We avoid trans fats. Trans fats is near and dear to my heart. It's been around for decades. And as soon as trans fats came out, researchers noticed that when you give mice trans fat, you induce heart disease and a whole host of problems. It's nearly impossible to give a mouse heart disease. They could eat pizza 24/7 and they wouldn't, like it is nearly impossible for them to get heart disease. They can be obese, they cannot eat healthfully, and they won't get heart disease. So from very early on, there was research suggesting that we don't process trans fats well, that our body doesn't know what to do with it. A lot of because that research didn't go the way people thought it should. It wasn't really followed up on that much. And now researchers and the public general public are recognizing that trans fats is really bad for our body. Our body has no idea what to do with it. And it views it as a toxin, and our body tries to get rid of it, and it doesn't know how to incorporate into the lipid membrane, and it's part of what's responsible for putting down plaques, for, that's an initial step in heart disease. Our body does not know how to process trans fats, and it's very bad for us. So when we eat whole foods, we avoid trans fats. As an FYI, trans fats are soon to be banned. Do not be fooled by anything that says partially hydrogenated oil, but no trans fats. It's basically the same thing. It's a way to help make the fats more solid, so it changes the chemical structure in the same way that trans fats does, and it's just as bad for the body. So really, as you make this process to whole foods, one of the first things to get rid of would be anything with partially hydrogenated oil or trans fats. Super bad for us. Not going to kill us if we have it once, twice, or even 10 or 20 times. And it really takes a toll on our system every time we have it. All right. We will also be avoiding high fructose corn syrup, which again is not natural and our body has a hard time processing. Synthetic sweeteners, depending on the sweetener, it can mess with our neurotransmitter production. It messes with a lot of times with synthesis of amino acids that are necessary in neurotransmitter production. And so actually, for a lot of people, certain synthetic sweeteners will cause migraines and headaches. MSG can also fall in this category. People can be sensitive to that as well. So synthetic sweeteners are bad for neurochemical production. In addition, it sets up, like how we have a thermostat in our home and it helps to maintain our the heat or cool in our home. So when it gets too hot, the air conditioning knows to kick in. our body's system for maintaining hunger and satiety and our weight, the sweetness of our foods and the calories that go with that sweetness, and the whole insulin response to perceive sweetness gets messed up when we use synthetic sweeteners. And this is what researchers have seen over time. People who eat a lot of fake sweets actually tend to gain weight. And they tend to gain it around the middle. They tend to become more insulin resistant. So once again, our body doesn't know what to do with these synthetic sweeteners. And then finally, of course, in eating whole foods, we will avoid synthetic chemicals, including preservative, dyes, artificial flavoring and coloring, as well as BPA. In eating whole foods, what we get is soluble fiber. And, this comes with this list, barley, oats, oatmeal, oat bran, dried beans, peas, lentils, nuts, flax seeds, psyllium, some fruits that I mentioned last time, like apples and pears, and vegetables. Insoluble fiber is found in whole grains, corn bran, seeds, nuts, broccoli, cabbage. So this is like roughage. Like when you, corn bran. I don't have corn there. Like when you eat corn, it just kind of passes through you. That's insoluble fiber. Our body cannot break it down. Whereas soluble fiber, like I don't know if you have ever had psyllium, it will dissolve in water and can be absorbed. So soluble fiber versus insoluble fiber, and a piece of corn is just going to drop to the bottom. It's not going to get absorbed at all. Edible fruits, skins, dark leafy greens are all insoluble fibers. We need both in our diet. Part of why soluble fiber, part of why fiber is important in our diet is that it slows down the absorption of sugar. And when we slow down the absorption of sugar, we don't get that sugar rush, that insulin spike, and then dip. Our levels raise and stay more consistent, and so it gives us energy instead of giving us a small burst of energy and then dropping. So that's one reason to have a high fiber diet. And one way you can even look at it is if you can sometimes you can look at it in terms of glycemic index, like how fast sugar is entered into the system. And when you have fiber in there, it slows that entry, and it's good for our system. Another reason why fiber is so good for our bodies is that although we don't digest it, right? We don't digest soluble fiber, we don't digest insoluble fiber. It stays in our gut. What does digest it is the bacteria in their gut. And over the past 10 to 15 years, I'm sure some of you have heard about this, but there's a whole bunch of emerging research on our gut biome. And so, for example, if you take two mice that are identical, identical genetically, except one of the mice is obese and the other is normal weight. If you do a gut transplant, so if you take like everything that's in the one mouse's gut, take it out, and then switch it with the other mouse, the obese mouse will become thin and the thin mouse will become obese. And it has to do with the bacteria in the gut. We are just beginning to understand that the bacteria in the gut help the gut to be healthy, i.e. not inflamed. And when it's healthy, The second biggest producer of neurochemicals is actually in our gut. So when our gut is healthy, we're producing neurochemicals and we're transmitting um, signals to the brain. Those include hunger and satiety signals. Those include metabolic signals. It affects the insulin response. So having a healthy gut ensures healthy action um, in the way our gut processes things. When we have other bacteria that come from eating, highly refined foods, definitely highly refined foods, and also probably some of these synthetic aspects of food as well. The composition of the bacteria in our gut changes, and we get more inflammation in the gut. We get more leakiness in the gut, which is part of the inflammation. And then the function of the gut changes, and all of a sudden, um, we need more food to run because we're not able to utilize what the nutrients with the current food that we're getting are giving us. So lots of reasons to have fiber in your diet. Another way to uh, manage some of that gut bacteria and keep our gut healthy is to eat fermented foods, which is again whole foods. So yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, miso, tempeh, kombucha. These are all fermented foods that can help reset the bacteria population in our gut. Um, if you think you have issues with your gut, I would definitely recommend seeing an integrative medicine specialist, because you'll want to get that assessed. Um, you may need to modify your diet pretty drastically for a couple of months, and you'll want to find ways to increase the healthy bacteria in your gut. Regardless, no matter where you're at, you can begin by assessing the extent to whole foods that you're eating and begin to make movement towards eating more whole foods. The final piece in eating whole foods that is actually really kind of amazing is there's something about eating the whole food that we as scientists and nutritionists don't have a clear handling or understanding of. There's something about, like in each food item, it's co-evolved with the rest of the planet and with us to give us a unique combination of vitamins, minerals, fiber, protein, and like some of the antioxidants, some of the phytochemicals, and some of these other components that scientists don't fully understand. There's something about eating the whole food that is better for us than if you reduced it, to vitamins, minerals, and the components that we know so far. All right. So I want to just show, I'm going to hide myself there. I want to just show um, the spectrum of processed foods. So, we've got whole foods, right? And then we've got minimally processed, moderately processed, and heavily processed foods. Minimally processed foods are great. There is no problem with them. They often are a big time saver. And if you can afford it, do it. So fresh cut fruit, pre-chopped vegetables, things like that. are minimally processed foods. And as we move to this to those through the spectrum, we get to moderately processed. And so this might be fruit juice or dried whole fruit, fresh frozen vegetables, frozen salmon burgers, instant oats, nut butter, white rice. You know, most of these are still pretty decent for you. Um, absolutely. And then when we get to heavily processed foods, this is where the system really begins to break down. And if you still have some of these items in your diet, this might be where you want to start changing. Flavored fruit rolls or gummies, frozen vegetable sides and sauces, like in a Swanson's dinner or something, or veggie chips, fish sticks, toasted oat cereal. Yeah, my family gets these Annie's Bunnies cereal, and even though it's organic and whatnot, it's still a toasted puffed cereal with sweetness in it. So not very good for that gut or the gut biome. Peanut butter cups, pasta. So here we go in terms of the spectrum of processed foods. So for the next week, without trying to change your behavior, I want you to pay attention to how much of your diet is whole, minimally, moderately, or heavily processed. So you've had your food diary, and today I will email out a food diary that has a column specifically for writing down how processed the food is. So using this modified food diary, you'll write down what you eat and how processed that food is. You'll include the amount of each item of what you eat, and you will assess the hunger and fullness rating each time you eat, both before and after the meal. And then at the end of the week, so really give yourself the time to do this. It's going to take some time just to check in and check, and some remembering to check in at hunger, fullness before and after the meal, and to write down how processed the food was. And then at the end of the week, look over your food diary and just note your current level of whole foods versus packaged and processed foods. And you might also note to see if there's a relationship between which foods left you feeling more satisfied, which foods left you feeling more full. And then from this week of diary, see if there are one or two places where you can begin to move either from heavily processed foods to moderately processed to minimally. Notice 1 to 2 places where you can make some changes for the following week. All right, so we are going to start with part of a hunger fullness scan now, and then we will come back to the second part of it in about 20 minutes or so. And then I'll want you to do a similar experiment a week when you're not doing the processed food with your food diary. So during the off week, because we have 2 weeks between sessions, right? you're going to use the hunger fullness scale to one day drink 4 ounces of apple juice. You're going to drink it when you have a hunger level. Ooh, that is a mistake. You're going to drink it when you have a hunger level at about a 6 on the hunger fullness scale. So you'll be, 6 is pretty, like you're having hunger pangs at 6. And you'll rate your fullness after you eat, before you eat, after you eat, and about 5 minutes after that, to get a sense of how long any fullness stays and how satisfying the food is. I'll also have you note any craving for the food. All right, and I feel like I just explained that really poorly, so I am going to do better when I talk about the following day. You're going to take a medium apple, again, when you're moderately hungry, so a 6 on the scale. All right, and so you're going to eat the apple, and then after you eat the apple, you are going to again assess your hunger level. You're going to notice if it's moved from a 6, let's say, down to a 3, or wherever it's moved. And you're also going to notice how satisfying it was to eat that apple. And we're going to work with the hunger and fullness scale in a minute, and then we'll work with a taste satiety scale a little bit later, okay? So we'll revisit that so you have a good sense of what we're looking for. So immediately after you eat that apple, you're gonna rate your hunger or fullness and taste and how satisfying the apple tasted. And then 10 minutes later, you'll do that again. You'll see if your hunger / fullness, it might be that your hunger's gotten stronger. It might be that you feel just as full. And you'll also rate how satisfied you feel. And then after you do this, you're going to compare the 2 items in terms of hunger and fullness and taste satiety. So it'll be interesting because 4 ounces or half a cup of apple juice and a medium apple are the same calorically, but obviously the apple has fiber and it has other factors that are not in the apple juice. And so just for you to know with this experiment, how did the more processed food compare to the less processed food in terms of hunger, satiety, taste satisfaction, inducing any cravings? So that's what I'm gonna want you to do. And so just as a reminder, this is the hunger scale. So 1, you're satisfied, so you're nicely full at 1. Around a 3 to a 4, you're neutral. 5 to 6, hunger pangs begin. And then they really set in at 7 and 8, 9, ravenous, and 10, just completely empty and needing to eat. So we're going to do a quick hunger fullness scan. And then I'm going to have you drink your apple juice. And I'm going to have you notice your hunger or fullness level. And I will also, and actually that's what we'll stick with for the apple juice. So I want you to first just listen to the following fact. So take a hand and make a fist with it. This is about the size of your stomach when it's empty. And then I want you to go ahead and take that hand and put it just right at the bottom of that lower left rib cage. That's where your stomach is. And that's how big it is when it's empty. And so just know that this is where your stomach is in your body. And now, when you're ready, we're going to do a settling in meditation, and then we'll bring our awareness to the sensation of hunger. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel where your body is supported by the earth or by the chair. Just letting gravity keep you tethered to the earth. Letting your rib cage house your breathing, your heartbeat, your liver, and knowing that your body is functioning and maintaining its structure on its own without any help from you right now. And as you sit here, continue to allow your body to soften and relax. So letting the shoulders relax and the arms relax, the back of the neck, the jaw, the eyes, the space between the eyebrows, the ears, not straining to hear, just letting information move through the inner eardrum to the brain, letting the top of the head relax and letting the back of the head relax. Now turn your awareness back to the breath and specifically feeling the belly rise and fall with each breath. And if it feels right, make a fist with your left hand and put it just below that left rib cage and feeling that space. And then let your awareness move a bit more physically internally. So dropping a bit deeper into that left abdomen. And notice if your stomach is growling, if there are any pangs, or if it's feeling neutral or satisfied. Again, note energy levels, which might come from blood sugar levels or insulin levels in the body at large, any irritability or lightheadedness or preoccupation with food, especially irritability, lightheadedness, or preoccupation that's been growing gradually over the past 3 hours. And from this information, assess your hunger/fullness level. Neutral, occasional pangs or emptiness, or completely, lots of growling, lots of preoccupation with food. So giving yourself a hunger level on a scale of 1 to 10. And then when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. After you've come up with that hunger level, open your eyes and drink that 4 ounces of apple juice. You can drink it, sip at a time and just notice how it tastes, uh, the pleasure in it or lack of pleasure, whether it's cold or warm, whether you can sense any chemical taste, how sweet it is, how the sweetness tastes to you. And then, after you drink that apple juice, I want you to again um, close your eyes, bring that fist back to that lower left part of the rib cage, and check in with your hunger level. Are you still having hunger pangs? Um, are you feeling more or less preoccupied with food? Where is your energy level? And just notice if there's a shift. There may or there may not be, but just noting what is present. And I would actually write that level down if you have a pen, where you were pre apple juice and post apple juice. All right. And then we'll move from that part of the mindful eating exercise. I'm going to continue on with a didactic piece for the next 10 minutes or so. All right. So remember, that hunger and fullness scale is different than the taste satiety scale. Um, so we could eat wood chips from now until kingdom come. Our stomach would feel full, but it wouldn't be it wouldn't be satisfying. It wouldn't be pleasurable, and it wouldn't satisfy the nutrient needs that our body has. So taste satiety is defined as how good a food tastes in the moment that we're eating it, and how good it tastes in general. So typically, the hungrier we are, the food usually tastes better in the moment. So we're not going to eat wood chips unless we're really, really desperate. I guess we probably won't eat wood chips, but we might try grass if we're really, really desperate. We might eat some grass or food that we know as humans we can't digest. We have 5 types of taste receptors, and sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. Um, Usually, the sensory specific satisfaction that we get from food comes from from having a combination of these taste receptors. And in fact, sometimes we overeat because we're not getting enough of different types of food. And especially in our culture, we don't get a lot of bitter foods. So cruciferous vegetables have some bitterness to them. they can be important sometimes. If we find ourselves overeating, it could be because we're deficient in one of these. And so making sure that we have all of these tastes in our diet. Um, and when we have a meal that has all of these tastes, and I'll also put spicy in there as well, and that's from Ayurveda, or the hotness of something. When we have these tastes in a meal, we tend to have higher satisfaction in terms of that taste satiety. One thing to note is that, we usually register individual flavors for a very short period of time. And so when we're eating, let's just say a sweet food item, we'll really taste it for the first 2 or 3 bites, maybe even 4. But by the time we get to the 5th, 6th, and certainly 10th bite, we're not tasting a food item that's predominantly sweet. Um, it's lost its pleasure, and yet a lot of us continue eating it because we're trying to get something, some emotional satisfaction from the food, and or because our gut biome is messed up, and or because we don't often have enough bitter or other flavor in our food. So that's the taste satisfaction meter, and I am going to want us this week to notice how satisfying whole foods are versus processed foods. And the other piece of it is, I'm going to want us to also assess how, and we'll begin to look at this, and we'll look at it more next time. What tends to set off more cravings, whole foods or processed foods? All right. So there's that piece of the taste satisfaction, and we will integrate taste satisfaction actually when we eat the apple, which we'll do in about 4 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to come back here for just a second. I talked about, and we have been talking about, how we often eat, often sweet foods, but treats, easy to eat, or maybe salty, easy to eat foods, when we're not getting any taste satiety out of them. We will often eat these foods when we are physically full. We often do this because we are emotionally eating and because we are not caring for ourselves in other ways. So this is where we come to healthy behaviors. And so we're beginning to look at what sustains me. What are my self-care practices? And first, why do we need to look at these self-care practices that sustain us? I really like this quote from Janine Roth. She says, "Freedom from obsession is not about something you do. It's about knowing who you are. It is about recognizing what sustains you and what exhausts you." So this is taken, excuse me. This is taken from 2015. It's copyrighted Vanderbilt University Medical Center from their Prevention Medical and Wellness Care. So beginning to look at, I want you to take a moment here to begin to assess again what sustains you. Do you have enough movement, exercise, and play in your life? Are you taking the time to eat food that is nourishing for you? What is your physical environment like? Are you getting enough sleep and rest? What are your relationships like, individual relationships and community relationships? mind and body, meditating? Are you taking the time to tune in to your stomach and your body? Am I hungry? Am I full? Are you able to respond to what your body is telling you? Spirit and soul, any religious affiliation, any like yoga can go here, can go in mind body connection. And then finally, this daily rhythm and balance. Are we attuned to our daily and monthly rhythms? Our energy level, I mean, big rhythms. Our energy level is going to be different when we're 65 versus when we're 20. Monthly rhythms, when we're menstruating or non-menstruating. Morning rhythms, daily rhythms, morning versus afternoon. That afternoon slump when the cortisol levels go up. So, are you in balance with your daily rhythms? And so here is just a little questionnaire, and just take a moment to have you look it over here. So now, do you sit down to eat meals? Do you get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night and wake feeling rested? Do you have a relaxing bedtime routine? Do you take breaks during your workday to recharge? Seek emotional support? And you can probably read it more quickly than I can. And know that if there is anything you score in the rarely column, this is an area to consider changing and taking more energy, whether it's time or money, spending more resources on that area, because all of these areas support healthy eating and overall health. And as you can see, it correlates to that wheel of health that we saw in the last slide. So it includes like the sleep, the meals, emotional support, so relationships, that play, setting limits, movement, taking care of the space around me, so keeping your physical space nice, having good food at the ready so you can have it when you're hungry. So I would encourage you to spend more time with this handout, and I will send you a PDF file of today's slides. You can have that, a hard copy if you'd like it. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes, so I want us to go back to the sensation in your stomach and your hunger levels, and I want you to tune back in and close your eyes. Feel your feet on the earth. Let your legs relax. Let your breath occur naturally, allowing your body to soften, and then making a fist with that left hand and bringing it over to that left side of the ribs. And again, note your hunger or fullness level. Are you satisfied? Are you neutral? Are you having hunger pangs? And give it a number and write that number down and compare it to the number that you gave it right after you drank the apple juice. Just note where it's at. All right. So you know where your hunger/fullness level is now. So I want you to start eating your apple and, chewing it in a regular way. And I'm going to continue talking as you eat your apple. And as you eat the apple, I also want you to begin to get a sense of how satisfying this apple is. So, how good does it taste in the moment? What taste do you notice? Surely you notice sweet. There's probably a little bit of sour in there. Depending on how ripe the apple is, there might be a little bit of bitterness in there. Notice how it feels to be chewing something that's due to the fibrous content. Just notice, and for some people, being able to chew is a part of taste satiety. They really like to chew, whereas other people really find like smooth foods or liquids to be more satisfying. So, giving the apple a taste satiety number. So, one is you're not noticing it at all. You're just not even aware of it, tasting like anything, or it might even taste bad. And 10 is, it's amazing and complex, and you're really hungry and it's really satisfying. If you're eating an apple, there's also, like the liquid of the juice from it. So that juice may also feel satisfying. Once you get down to a 3 or a 4 with the apple, you're not really noticing it that much anymore. And then a 1 and a 2, you're completely not noticing it as you eat it, or there's a little sort of like ick with it. So continue to eat the apple, notice the taste, satiety. And then once you're done eating the apple, um, I want you to go back and rate your hunger/fullness level again. After you eat an entire apple, it's probably likely that the immediate hunger level is going to go down. So you're going to feel more full. So if you started at a 5, you might be down to a 3 or so. If you started at 7, you might be down to a 5. But just notice after you eat the apple where your hunger/fullness level is. And then at the end of the session, write it down. Then at the end of the session, then have you come back and rate that hunger fullness level again. Okay. So with this self-care quiz, we're getting a sense of areas that we might need to make some change in. And so these areas include relationships, so intimate relationships, parenting, family, social community relationships. It includes the play, like the hobbies and recreation. There's work that's important. It's an important domain. Professional and personal development, that mind-body connection, movement and exercise, nutrition, our environment, rest, spirit, and soul. Um, so I'm not advocating religion. I do like this passage from Matthew in the New Testament or the Christian Bible. And there's a line that says, "For where your treasure is, there is your heart. There your heart will be also." I grew up in the Mennonite church, and our pastor would always quote this passage when he was trying to get people to tithe. Um, and there's truth to it. How does our energy, whether it's monetary or time or spending time with people, does our energy reflect what we say is important to us? Does it reflect the importance that we place in these domains? And when we want to eat better and have better health, these self-care domains are very important. So I would suggest in the second or third session, I had a values worksheet that asked questions about different domains. And I'm going to suggest that you revisit this again, and especially in light of this quiz, what domains, how important are each of these domains to you, and how successful have you been in these domains? And so it might be in the mind-body connection, it's very important for you to be tuned into hunger and fullness and to be able to respond to those hunger signals in a way that listens to them, listens to what they're saying, and you might not be very successful at it. So it might be that you need to do some of this more formal hunger fullness scale when you're eating. You might need to do that more formally for the next bit and really consciously do that. Consciously do that at every meal. So that could be one thing. Another piece might be eating well, or, with nutrition, you might be focusing on, let's say, less calories because you want to lose weight, and you realize actually nutrition is really important to you, but like that you're focusing on it in a way that isn't consistent with your values. Really, with nutrition, what's important to you is that, and I would advise you to use these pillars as what's important for you in nutrition. And of course, you're going to worry more about what you look like or calories at certain times, or you'll want to beat yourself up. But really letting yourself come back to using nutrition because you want to be healthier overall. And it might be that you want to look better, and it might be that actually what you're doing is in fact, beating yourself up for making mistakes and being really critical of your looks, and actually that's not working. So that might mean you need to go back more to some of those webinars where we discuss like that, critical part of us, and, honoring the positive intention of that critical part and trying to address the needs of that critical part in the way that it needs to be done. And even last week, that a woman of a certain age deals with that in a fun but real way. So working with nutrition might mean different things to different people. For some people, it might mean I'm not taking enough time to get healthy recipes, or I'm not willing to spend the money that I need at the store. And you got to get down to it. Is that important to me? For where my treasure is, that's where my heart goes. If I don't put time into it, it's not going to work. For other people, it might be more of a preoccupation thing or a critical thing, and then you need to work with that. So figuring out where your energy level misaligns with these domains, and figuring out where you're a little bit off track and how you're working with each of these domains in terms of values. Now, the last thing I'll say is, you cannot change all of these at once, right? So I would choose 1 to 2 things right now to make some concrete changes wherever it's most important to you right now. You may actually care about your nutrition a lot, but your mom may have cancer and you may need to be spending a lot of time with her. So even though this is important, it's going to take a back burner because there's a crisis going on. So I would choose 1 to 2 domains and really focus on those. And then what you do, actually, we'll do this the next time. You come back to it every couple weeks. You see how you're doing, and you see where you can, what you've completed, and where you can move on to, where you need to make adjustments. So there's that piece. All right, and then here are some values. And we had talked about values before, but you can think about which values may be important for each of these domains. And you could also see, how do these values fit into your goal of changing your relationship with food and being healthier overall. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes. So I'm going to have you go back, close your eyes, tune in, feel your feet on the floor. Feel where your body is touching the earth, and make a fist with that left hand and put it over just below that left rib cage, and tune into your stomach. And based on the physical sensations from your stomach, energy levels, preoccupation with food, or a sense of well-being, rate your hunger / fullness level. See if it's changed from where you were 10 minutes ago, just after you ate the apple. It might be that it's the same spot. It might be a little bit higher, depending on how hungry you were, or you might still feel pretty neutral or satisfied. Also notice if there are any cravings to eat right now, or any desire to eat more. And notice if that desire to eat more is based on hunger, true hunger, or if the desire to eat food is based on something that's not due to true hunger. So a craving. And if you're noticing any craving, you can write that down, again, on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being no craving at all, and 10 is like, you are just wanting to leave this webinar right now and go get food, and you can barely stand it. All right, and then when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. All right, so we are really going to use these tools of hunger and fullness, taste, satiety, and cravings to begin to assess how processed foods affect our hunger, fullness, taste, satiety, and cravings, how whole foods affect it, how fiber affects it. So we'll be working with that. And then the other piece is really having you tune into where your values are aligned with your energy levels and where there needs to be some shifts. So continuing with movement, obviously important, formal meditation. Continue to make these mindful substitutions with foods. And for these 2 weeks, we're going to look at foods that move us more in the direction of whole foods. Maintain your food diary, and And we're going to specifically, whoops, oh no, switch camera, there we go. Yes, okay, and we're gonna specifically have you use your food diary where you're writing down the level of processing that your food has, hunger and fullness, taste, satiety, and craving. And I will send out a specific handout for that. So you can do that relatively easily. All right. Whole foods, self-care, all in part, all a part of embodied living and living well. All right. Have an embodied next 2 weeks, embodied eating, and embodied living. All right, take care.